Hi, Michael. I gather your position is that science is based on observing and testing, whilst religion is totally based on faith. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say totally, but yeah, faith
okay.
is corrupting.
Okay. You stated in your talk that science can't answer all the questions of origin. That renders a degree of speculation on unobservable and uncharted territory. Are those premature conclusions not an act of faith?
No, they're not, because scientists never claim to know the truth about anything. I would certainly claim never to know the truth about anything. Anything that I've said tonight, I'm quite happy to say that I might be mistaken, and that if I hear other information that that suggests that I'm mistaken, I'll change my mind. When science says that something is a fact, it's kind of a shorthand for based on the best currently available evidence and based on applying reason to the best currently available evidence, this is what we believe is most likely to be the case.
Believe.
Believe. Oh, but clearly, yeah. Clearly. That's not a controversial assertion to make. But the difference between science and religion is that the scientific beliefs that have been moved up to be considered just in day-to-day language facts are things that have been so reliably repeatable independently by different people or by observance of nature by different people that just in terms of day-to-day living, you just accept it as you say that it's a fact, but you're always open to the idea that you might be wrong. Like recently, with recently that there was a possibility that experiments have shown that the speed of light, it might be possible to move beyond the speed of light at certain subatomic particle level, which would have been revolutionary. And but no scientist said this is impossible. They said, we need to check again, and we need to check, and it's quite unlikely. Now, as it turns out, I think it seems to be the case that it was measurement error in the equipment that they were using. But the point is that if it had not been measurement error, then science would have just adjusted to that new reality.
So God's not impossible? Sorry? So God is not impossible?
Well, it depends on what you mean by God. I mean, there's a kind of semantic thing. I'd say that the God of... The God of the Abrahamic God, in whatever guise, there is significantly more evidence to suggest that is an idea that was invented by humans, with all of the various, sometimes contradictory and sometimes unlikely for a compassionate God attributes, than it is that it actually exists. If you want to redefine God into something that is so abstract that it doesn't really mean anything. That's a different kind of topic. Like when people are asked, do they believe in God in surveys, and most people say they do, but when they're asked underneath that, do you believe in a personal intervening God, or do you believe in an impersonal life force or spirit? It comes down to, I don't know what the figures are in other continents, but in terms of Europe and America, it comes down to about 50% in Europe and about 2/3 in the United States say that they believe in a personal intervening God. Now, my opinion is that when you move beyond that into these sort of abstract concepts, that it's such a different idea that I think we should use a different word to describe that concept, so that you can discuss that without entangling it with the specific claims about gods that religions make.
Okay.
Say that. Ask another question.
Okay, it was just the meaning of God was a creator who's independent of creation.
Sorry?
A creator who's independent of creation. That's what I meant by God.
Okay, well just briefly in terms of that, I mean, you get into the infinite regress argument that if you believe that either something was there for eternity, or there was a start, and if you say that the start, that there had to be a start because you can't have an infinite regress and the start was a creator that's outside of creation, all you're doing is shifting the problem back to what created the creator. So it doesn't really answer the question. It just reformulates it in a different set of words.
Just on science and religion being opposing camps, there's the idea that the scientific laws and patterns that you mentioned and the evidence is all written into the universe by God, and is there for us to discover. And morality was mentioned as well. You could argue the same thing, that it's written into our hearts and minds. And it's up to us using our sort of innate reason, let's say, to discover the scientific laws and morals. So, do you think there's a space for a natural theology as opposed to sort of revealed religion?
The laws of nature are the phrase is meant to describe what we observe happening rather than things that things have to do. But you can speculate that they might have been put there by a god, but you may as well speculate that they were put there by a banana sandwich. It's a random sort of conclusion to assume. What science does is it tries to discover more and more about reality, and it adjusts. Science adjusts. It's always provisional, however strong they may be. Always provisional beliefs based on new evidence coming available. I think it's more likely. I'll phrase it differently. If you're talking about speculating about, say, what caused the Big Bang, without using the emotive language like creation, but what caused the universe, our universe, to come into existence. You don't put equal weight on each hypothesis and say, well, it might have been Allah, or it might have been something else. You say what possible options are most consistent with the available evidence and the pattern of available scientific research over the generations. And what that pattern has shown is that increasingly where we have thought, both on a macro level and a micro level, where we have thought that we were the only planet, we were the only galaxy, we were the only universe, or at a micro level that atoms are the smallest possible thing, to the protons and neutrons and electrons, to the subatomic quark particles below that. We're constantly finding that there are more and more detailed natural explanations, and that we just happen to be where we are, but that things stretch almost infinitely in both directions, small and large. And I think it is more likely that when we do find out, or maybe we won't find out, maybe it will take a future species that we evolve into that will be capable of finding out what it is that came before the Big Bang. It seems far more likely that it will be a natural explanation than a supernatural one.
You told the atheists all believe in evolution, and could you just tell me, while man was sort of evolving and coming into the present form that he's now, what happened to the rest of the world? Where was it? And who was directing things? There's got to be a creator somewhere who was doing everything else.
What evolution suggests is that different beings, there's a different field of science, which is abiogenesis, which tries to ascertain how non-animate matter became animate matter. But once there are living beings, that some living beings are better able to survive in the environment that they're in than others. And that the ones that are better able to survive clearly live longer, and the ones that are less well able to survive die earlier. And therefore, the ones that live longer more prolifically reproduce, and therefore their genes carry on, whereas the ones that die off don't. So as time goes on, more and more species, depending on where they happen to be living within the Earth, most of which is uninhabitable for most living beings anyway, but depending on where they happen to be, they evolved in different ways, gradually over a huge period of time. And essentially, this isn't controversial in terms of the science, that gradually it branched out into so much complexity that we have all the different species that we have today. It can be explained and explored quite rationally without any need to have anybody directing it. In fact, if you were to suggest that there was somebody directing it, and if you were to look at humans, who are supposed to be, the peak of I was going to say evolution, but from a religious perspective, it's supposed to be, what everything was building up to from a religious perspective, or that it's that the creator has a special relationship with humans. And if there was a creator in that way, I mean, you'd think that he could have designed humans in a more robust manner, and more capable of living more easily in the environment that we're in. I could go into all the things that are wrong with humans design-wise, but I'll leave it at that.
No, but if, can I just say something? But if there was no creator, how would the whole process of evolution even take place? It was not possible. I mean, that the people evolved had to be somewhere.
Okay, evolution is uncontroversial scientifically. But where your issue would come in, I think, more reasonably, is a stage before evolution. It's at the stage of how the universe came about. And if you go to that stage, I think that the question is, there are two possibilities. Either, I'm not going to use the term universe because we've kind of got what we call the universe may not be the only universe. But let's say all that exists, wherever it may be, and whether we know about it or not, either all that existed forever.
But from where?
Either existed forever, or else it didn't exist forever and something started it. Now, if your argument is that it didn't exist forever and something started it, then all you're doing is shifting the question back to this something that started it. Where did that come from? And if you say, well, that creature existed forever for some reason, if you can accept that existed forever, then why can't you accept that the universe exists, that all that existed forever? So incorporating a God into the equation may seem to answer the question, but all it does is shift the question back into another stage where an imaginary being is added into the equation that there's no evidence for.